Welcome back to Blackthornprod. I'm Noah, an indie game developer currently working on a game called The Dreadful Whispers. It's a game about overcoming fear, a world full of monsters, dark shadows, twisted platforms, and friendly faces. I've been trying my best to make a unique world, from the art down to the gameplay, because that's the ultimate weapon of indie game developers after all, being unique and trying to make personal things. In this video, I wanted to talk about the art of my game and how I made some of it. I'm using the Unity game engine to develop the Dreadful Whispers, meaning I design all the levels in Unity, add scripts to various objects in Unity, and import art from Photoshop, which I then animate in Unity. Yes, I love Unity. And two of my favorite Unity tools are the sprite mask and more recently the hinge joint tool. Let's start with the hinge joint tool. It basically lets devs make cool rope-like physics effects. So stuff like chains, but also dodgy bridges or vicious maces can be made with this Unity component. When I discovered this tool, I instantly fell in love with it. So here's some examples of scenes where I use the hinge joint component. Here, giant wet black worm creatures dangle in the air. There's something so satisfying about colliding with them and seeing them wildly move about. I call these the little boys, chained to the ceiling, vicious, bloodthirsty and furious. I animated invisible colliders to clash against the chains, which makes them move in interesting ways. If not, the chains would eventually come to a halt, and the little boys wouldn't feel or look nearly as dangerous and spooky. And of course, the hinge joint tool just adds life to the world and makes it feel more polished. Here's a scene I made a while back full of chains. It looks pretty cool, but there's definitely a lack of movement going on. But now, there's physics-based chains which the player can collide with and move around. The level feels instantly more interesting, polished, and fun to navigate. So to bring your environments to life, try and add elements the player can interact with, or environment pieces that react to the player, like trees that move underfoot. Your character needs to feel a part of the world. Consider checking out this video I made a while back on how to make great game environments. Now, there's a great quote from one of the creators of Pixar that goes, "The art challenges the technology, and the technology inspires the art." That's why I feel with Unity, especially the second part, technology inspires the art. So many Unity tools have filled my head with great ideas or interesting visuals. If it wasn't for the hinge joint tool, I wouldn't have been able to bring to life these anonymous wobbly figures, or this yucky creature. So take inspiration from the tools available to you. I'll of course have some great tutorials about the hinge joint tool linked in the description if you want to learn how to use it yourself. Next up, the sprite mask. This easily lets developers hide or show parts of a sprite. So for example, I have these two sprites. One featuring a happy human, the other is a monstrous mutation of that same human. I'll place these two sprites on top of each other. The monster will only be visible inside the sprite mask, and the human will only be visible outside the sprite mask. So I'll create a circular sprite mask, move it about, and you can see the interesting end results. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. For me, this is one of Unity's most interesting creative tools, and it plays a massive part in the Dreadful Whispers, where the player controls a trail-like object that reveals a darker, more sinister world. I feel like I've used the sprite mask to its fullest with this project. The path ahead seems empty, void of any danger. Well, think again, horrors lurk, hiding in the shadows. Of course, the big challenge here was making all the art. Each level needed two sides, a normal side and a usually darker, more dangerous side that could be revealed with the sprite mask. So platforms, backgrounds, environment pieces, characters, everything needed to be made twice. Of course, I often used some little shortcuts, like just changing the color of an asset. But for the most part, developing this two-sided world was made possible thanks to the simple art style I'm using. Each asset is very simple, and usually made in no more than a couple of minutes. I can't possibly spend hours and hours on a single tree, for example, or I would never finish the game. Colors. The art style of the Dreadful Whispers relies heavily on vibrant, interesting colors. I try and mix up the colors every few levels to keep the player interested and excited to see what's coming up next. This is easily done by simply changing the background color, of course, but also the use of soft shapes to create some cool lighting effects. I use a simple soft round brush in Photoshop to create my lighting shapes, import those in Unity, and use that over my scenes to make some lighting. So for example, I lower the opacity of the shape to make it more transparent, and then change the color, let's say a golden color. And now this side of the level looks brighter and perhaps more welcoming than if I made it red. Now it looks like whatever lurks ahead is dangerous. Here's a vibrant purple scene. By changing the background color and lighting effects, I can very quickly change the level's entire atmosphere. By the way, I made a whole video on this lighting effect which you can check out. Being innovative and yourself is the most powerful tool you have as an indie game developer. Don't try and compete on a technical level with people more experienced than you, be that for art or programming or music. Just do things differently. That way you can't be compared and there's no winners or losers. It's just different artists running their own unique race. Thanks a lot for watching, and thank you to my patrons for their amazing financial support. Stay tuned everyone. Cheers.